Hello, everyone. Welcome to Washington Christian Academy's workshop. We're going to be starting in about 5 minutes. This workshop is going to be about affording a Christian education. We're delighted to have you with us, and we got some really helpful information today for you, and a special speaker that's going to really dive in deep here and help you as you explore how to afford a Christian education. So we'll be right with you in just a few minutes. Thank you. Hello, everyone. We're waiting about another minute here as a few more people log in, but we're going to start the Affording a Christian Education workshop for Washington Christian Academy. We're excited about this, and we'll be right back with you here just to start in about 60 seconds. Thank you. Well, welcome, everyone. We're going to start the workshop here, and as many of you are logging in, we'll probably have a few more joining us. We're delighted today to bring some information to you that I think is just really cutting edge and very helpful, and as for families as they kind of go forward in their walk with their Lord, just in deciding can they afford to put their children in a Christian school. And usually one of the biggest challenges with that is the financial piece. And with us today, we have David Hawes, who's the Director of Operations. He's at Washington Christian Academy. And what we're going to do is he's going to present on the details and specifics around this. But prior to even bringing Dave in, just to mention a little bit about Washington Christian Academy. It's located in Olney, Maryland. You can get to our website at washingtonchristian.org. If you have any questions, we're going to, at the tail end of this, you can have some further contact information that we'll get into. But with that, let me bring David Hawes on. Cherie Pilgrim is going to join us. Something came up where she couldn't join us today. We'll probably have her on our future webinar, but Dave's going to lead the way here. So with that, Dave, why don't you give a quick introduction of yourself and a little background on who you are and why you're passionate about helping families afford Christian education.
Great. Thanks so much, Ralph. As Ralph mentioned, I'm the Director of Operations at Washington Christian Academy. I've been here with the school for 10 years and have spent all 10 of those associated with, the business office, financial aspects of the school from that perspective, and also from the family's perspective. I've been involved with the admission office, our tuition assistance process, and have had lots and lots of discussions with families about their financial situation and their desire to attend Washington Christian Academy and being able to make that possible. So in addition to that, I also happen to have 5 children. So my wife and I have been through the same thing you all are probably thinking about. How in the world is this going to happen? And as you multiply children, it gets harder and harder to do that. So that's a challenge that our family has faced and prayed through and seen the Lord work in some great ways. So that's a little background about who you're going to be listening to.
Great. Thanks, Dave. That's really helpful. And we're excited to have you do this presentation. Before you dive into the agenda here, I just have a quick poll question for everyone. You can kind of see it in your screen here. I'm going to start that. We just want to know kind of who's on the presentation here and a little background on you, so we can be more helpful. The question is, and this is loaded up in there, you can see real live answers. Do you currently pay tuition for your child's education? If you could just give a quick answer on that, that'd be great. You can see it right there in your browser. So back to you, Dave. Go ahead.
Great. Thank you, Ralph. Our agenda for today, we're going to work to keep this to 30 minutes to just use your time wisely, get through the presentation, and have some time, as you can see at the end, for questions. We understand it's a challenge. We're going to talk a little bit about that. The bulk of the presentation today is going to be about, how can a family, afford tuition when you see those numbers. I'll share some specifics about our school and the things that we do, and then answer some questions you have, and particularly the question, what should I do next? So one of the ways I've thought about this, again, for our family and discussing other families, is, getting to a Christian school, particularly, figuring out the financial part, is kind of like building a bridge. You're on one side of this huge river or chasm, having your children enrolled in the schools on the other side, and it looks like a huge distance, and sometimes you feel like, you can't even see the other side, much less understand how you could possibly build a bridge from one side to the other. I think, the main thing in thinking about this bridge part is that I want you to understand you don't have to build it yourself. The school is going to be that you're working with is going to be a part of, building that bridge to get you across. There are other options or programs that I'll speak about. Some just in general that I know Christian schools have had and have in place to be able to do that. But, the bridge gets built in a series of pieces. Obviously, the family, starts the building with the resources they have, but there are other things that get put in place. Let's talk a little bit about that challenge. And as I talk with families about, school and finances, sometimes, I get the question, why does it cost so much? Why is that huge obstacle there? And it is significant. One thing I'm sure you all know is that all private schools, particularly Christian schools, don't receive state funding. So all of the expenses associated with a school, come from tuition and any fundraising that the school does, any donations that are given. The vast majority is typically the tuition, and that's funding, facilities, everything that happens there. The biggest part of a typical school budget are the salaries and benefits that the faculty and staff get. And that's really important, I think, for you all to know as you're looking at that tuition number and wonder, where it's coming from. Christian schools, we want to pay the teachers what they're worth. In general, we don't think teachers are paid what they're worth, but we want to do as good a job as we can. We want to be able to provide, kind of benefits that would allow even a head of household to, be at our school teaching. Christian schools want to be able to do that. It reflects the value that we have in what's going on at the school, and to minimize or marginalize that, says it's really not worth very much if we're not paying people very much to be able to do it. At the same time, we want to be able to hire professional teachers, those that have invested in their lives in education, to bring them to a point where they're going to deliver a great education. And from a Christian school's perspective, we're not trying to match other private schools in credentials necessarily, but we certainly want to do that in the quality of the education that we provide. And we don't think that Christian schools should take a back seat in that quality of education. And where does that quality come from? It comes from the faculty and staff that are there, and the quality of teachers that you can get. So just again, as I've spent 10 years on the business side of the school, I wanted to share a little bit about that. Why does it cost so much? You'll see as you're looking at schools, there's a range of tuition in different Christian schools. There are some differences in expenses and staff salaries and benefits and things like that. I would tell you, don't hesitate as you're talking to a school or working with it. Don't hesitate to ask questions about their expenses. You're going to be paying tuition there if you attend. It's your money going toward those things. So so find out. They're not obviously going to be able to give you specific salary information for particular teachers, but they certainly should be able to share, in general, what your tuition money is going for. We certainly understand that families typically do not have financial resources to be able to support, all tuition, or again, particularly tuition for multiple, children. That there are limits to what families are going to be able to do to bring. And as I said before, our family understands that. And then, back to my bridge analogy, you might think you've got the bridge built, and then, you've got the tuition handled, but then you find out as you go through the process a little bit more that there are other fees, on top of that. You've got to build that bridge even further than you thought. So that's something that adds to the challenge. At times, it's not just tuition, it's, other things on top of that, athletic fees or, other things that might be associated with that. So I certainly encourage you as you're going through this to make sure you've got, that full picture and you understand the fees. So hopefully that's not all bad news. Let's go to, talking about now, how can you afford it? What are the things, what are the programs in place that allow you to be able to build that bridge? Besides what, the family's resources and the amount of the tuition they're able to pay, the first other part of that bridge is going to be built typically comes from the tuition assistance program at schools. Over the years, as I've talked with families and, some not even necessarily applying, but just in my church and in the neighborhood about, private school education, and I ask them about it. They bring up the tuition as a roadblock, and I say, well, have you asked about tuition assistance? And they say, well, no, that my family isn't on food stamps. I don't. I make a fairly good income. I don't think there's any way I'd qualify, and I don't doesn't feel right for me to be getting, financial aid, in something like this. In fact, at our school, we don't call it financial aid for that very reason. It's tuition assistance, and it is there for a broad range of families. In fact, in many schools, just economic diversity within the school is a part of the mission of the school. And that's certainly true for us. Schools see the value in having a range of, families with a range of, economic backgrounds and diversity in lots of areas, but that's certainly one important area of diversity, and that's a value to the general community. So, families coming and getting tuition assistance are certainly, not, the odd people out or stepchildren in the family, in the community, that's a part of a Christian school, full, desired, valued members of the community. So that's the first thing for you to think about. Also, it's very typical in Christian schools for many families to be receiving tuition assistance. Not just a subset. I can't speak for all of the Christian schools out there. I've had conversations with many other administrators in Christian school business offices, and I know that a large number of families, and many of them, are receiving tuition assistance. So it's not that, small, you might think of kind of, food stamp category. And the last thing I would say that helps schools to be able to provide tuition assistance is it's something that we can fundraise for. There are a group of people out there who have hearts for Christian education and care about getting, kids in Christian schools, and they donate to schools specifically for the purpose of broadening that economic diversity and, getting kids in Christian schools. So at the end of it, I would say in the tuition assistance part of this, don't hesitate, to apply. And to consider, as you look at that tuition number, that tuition assistance can often be a significant part of that bridge that gets added on to help you bridge that gap and get you to the other side. Discounts. There are many schools that have discounts, for multiple children. Potentially 10% for. As an example, for the second child, and maybe 20% for the third child, but those exist out there. There are schools at times that will have specific discounts for new families as they're trying to grow the enrollment of the school. They'll have some discount of the tuition for new families joining in. And there are some Christian schools affiliated either with churches or denominations where a discount is available to families who attend that specific church or denomination. So I encourage you in the case of discounts to make sure to ask the school about multiple children, if there are any discounts that are available out there. And there might be some that also help build that bridge for you. There are other sources that besides discounts, tuition assistance, and families, and we've seen this come up. I couldn't list on this slide, the different, types I've seen over the years, the ways that the Lord has provided for children to be able to attend. Some of the more typical ones are extended family. We've had several grandparents over the years, interested in the education of their grandchildren and recognize, the difference that's going to make in their lives. I'm a recent grandfather. I've got a granddaughter about 1.5 years old, and it would be a dream of mine for her, to attend a Christian school, the Washington Christian Academy. I haven't made a commitment to my son. I don't know if he's listening out there yet, but I haven't made a commitment to financially support her, but it's absolutely would be something I would pray about. If that was something that would help her, my granddaughter, attend a Christian school. And there are churches, employers, other places that are potential sources to help, bridge that gap and get you across to the other side. I'd like to share a little bit about what we've seen in some families, adjustments to some of the priorities that they've made. And as you can see on the slide, I have this phrase, to consider not just what the school costs, but really to consider what it's worth. Consider the value of that Christian education. Spend 1 minute for me. Think about in your own life, everything that happened to you from your first day of kindergarten. Maybe you're, nervously, if you remember that, holding onto your parents' hand, heading into your first kindergarten classroom. everything that happened to you from that first day until you walked across the stage at your high school graduation. And I think, as you're thinking about your life and maybe thinking about your children's life, a lot of things happen. And in many cases, we live our lives either benefiting from, what's happened to us during that time or trying to recover from it. So, we think of those years between kindergarten and high school as an incredible investment, and with a value not just during the period of time that they're in school, but an investment that will last through the lives of their entire life, and even onto the lives of their children, and even on into eternity. So there's an incredible value, we believe, in those years and that investment. And we've seen families, as they think about that, look at their own budgets and at times make some adjustments in what they're investing in with the resources that the Lord has provided them. And as I think about the Lord saying where we're to invest our treasure, it'd be hard for me to think about a better place than in as my wife and I have thought about that, in the 5 children that we have. The last thing I'd like to talk about in this set of how families can afford this is that often schools are able to work with families in their budgets and the ebbs and flows of their finances through the course of their time, and can often structure payment plans to match it. So you might think, well, over the course of the year, I might be able to, with these other things, build that bridge, but I'm certainly not going to have that amount up at the front at the beginning of the school year. Typically, schools will have, payment plans, semi-annual, sometimes 10 or even 12 months, so the kids aren't in school all 12 months. You don't, families, financial patterns often are the same through the course of those 12 months. And so, as I've said in other things, I would certainly encourage, families to ask the school, what part they can play in helping to structure things that would make it easier for a family to handle it through the course of the year. And Christian schools are very often, they're going to be interested in working with you and interested in hearing about your particular individual situation, and interested in trying to help build that bridge. When you walk through the door and you are contemplating that school, they're going to see you as a value to the school and want to get you there and want to try to work through all of these things to try to help you be able to build that bridge. So hopefully there are some things in there maybe that you hadn't thought about, but those are the basic building blocks that we think about when we're trying to help work with a family to put things together. I'm going to talk a little bit now about some of the specifics at Washington Christian Academy and parameters that we have associated with our plans or our bridge building. We are one of the schools where many of the families receive tuition assistance. For us, that's over 50%. So, we value that. We have a great diversity in many ways at WCA, but economic diversity is part of that, and that's an important part of our community that we think. So that's a big part of the program. It is built into the mission of the school. So our tuition assistance budget and our fundraising for that is a part of really who we are in wanting to have that wide range of families here. We do award tuition assistance amounts based on the needs that exist. There are families who have significant resources that don't have needs, and we want to use the tuition assistance dollars we have to go to families that do have needs. So you might ask, how in the world do we figure that out? Well, we use a third-party service that many private schools also use. Families, put that information in, their financial information in, and then it calculates what's called an expected family contribution that gives us an idea of where a family's resources are. It collects, information, not just, what a salary is, but, is able to take into account, other living, situations or circumstances, family-owned businesses that people have, and we're also able to, to plug in, charitable giving and tithing as a part of that. And we certainly, want that to be a part of the family's life here, and that's something that we certainly consider, when we're looking at needs and awards. Our amounts, so think back to that bridge. If that gap between what you can build and what's left is 50%, our school is typically successful in being able to build half of the bridge for you. We do have many families that have tuition assistance, grants between 0 and 50%. We do have some that are receiving more than 50%. We don't have a fast rule on that 50% number. That's what's typical and is and works financially with our budget amounts. But again, because we want a greater financial diversity, we have more than that. Obviously, because we have to pay our bills, it just gets a little harder when we're building more than 50% of that bridge. As you're considering WCA, one of the things that we try to build in is most of all of the costs are a part of the tuition. So we don't have a lot of additional fees. There are a few things that we have at the point that students are graduating, because there are some specific fees associated with that. We have that in. We have students buy in their literature classes their own paperback versions of the novels they're reading so they can mark in them. So there are a few things. We have school uniforms. And so that's a part of the responsibility of the families. So there are a few things in there, but we don't have a lot of fees associated with that. And finally, I'd like to talk a little bit about our tuition assistance process. We do it in conjunction with the application process. So at the same time, you're getting teacher recommendations and other information to get your student admitted. You could be filling out the tuition assistance information. And the other thing I would say is that it is personal and individual. Though we have people use our service and fill out forms, information, we still can treat every family individually. We can hear about individual circumstances that they have financially, and our tuition assistance committee looks at not just a formula number that comes out, but really is able to hear the story of every family. And as I said before, really, we want to be able to get families there. All right, well, what's next? You've heard this. Hopefully, I've given you, in this discussion, some hope, maybe where you didn't have it before. Or maybe you were hesitating, and you weren't knocking at any doors, or, weren't pursuing Christian education because you saw, or maybe you couldn't even see the other side of the river in that bridge that you needed to build. And so what I want to remind you is that, and encourage you, don't ask the question at the beginning, can I afford this tuition? The first question really to ask is it worth your time just beginning the process? Stepping into it, applying for tuition assistance, checking out the school, and that's really, the question. Is it worth that time? You will not have to make any financial commitments before you're able to see what the whole picture is. You see how those places fall in line. You see what the Lord does. I want to encourage you not to say no before you don't know what the answer is. And if you're not even pursuing it, if you don't ask about tuition assistance or look into discounts, in some sense, you're saying no even before you know what the answer is, or you're giving yourself a no. So, don't say no before you can see the full picture. We've had families in conversations, go through this and kind of get to the other side with both answers. We've had some families that thought, there's no way this is going to work. And we encourage them, well, just start, let's apply, see what happens, pray, see what the Lord is going to do. And they get through the process and are really surprised when they get to the end. And their children are in the school and have been here, and then they have another child they bring, and they're amazed that that works, and they just see the Lord at work, confirming, their desire to have children in school. At times we have had families go through the process, and at that time, the pieces don't fall into place, and they're not able to enroll. But they certainly have learned, what the framework is. They've learned what resources available, and there have been some cases where a year or two later things do fall into place. But they'll have the benefit of going through the process and really understanding it. So you won't have to make that decision at the end. So there might be, you might fall into one of three different categories right now as you're thinking about what's next. You might be the person that has looked at Christian schools, has thought about it, and you're ready to go. So I would encourage you, if you haven't visited the school, to do that. If you're thinking about Washington Christian Academy, that's the first thing we encourage people to do, is to come to the school if you haven't been here yet. Visit us, see the teachers, talk to us. Besides the financial pieces that you'll start to learn about, you need to know if this is going to be the right place for your child. And you need to start working on that and thinking about that and praying, and you need to come to the school. So we've got monthly open houses. If those don't work, that information is available on our website. If those don't work, then we can do individual tours. But if you're ready to go, then I encourage you to take that first step and do it. You might be not quite ready yet there. You might be a researcher and someone that needs a little bit more information. Typically, websites are there and are available. Our website has lots of information. Hopefully, it will answer lots of questions, other resources, ebooks that are available, and I encourage you to do that research, and again, with a view to learning about the school and seeing if the purpose, the mission the school has matches the desires that you have for your children. Or you might fall somewhere in between. You might not be ready to visit the school, have done the research, have some questions. I encourage you to call schools, to talk to them, and to find out, to get those answers to your questions. So, but at the end of the day, what I would say is I encourage you to take a step. Whatever that step is, if it's one of those three, if it's a different step for you to take, then the next most important thing to do is to take just the next step. Don't worry about, am I going to get all the way across the bridge? Just take that first step and see how you can build it. Well, I hope this has been beneficial. I'm going to turn it back to Ralph, our host, and see if in the couple of minutes remaining, there's some questions out there we can answer.
Yeah, thanks, David. That was very, very helpful and informative. While you guys are thinking of some questions, you can actually write those in the chat panel there. We'll take those questions in. We have a couple coming in here. And the first thing that I want to do is point you to a poll question. And it's you can see there on the sidebar, the questions, which of these best describes you when it comes to tuition assistance? You're just researching options. You're not sure if you can qualify for assistance, but know you need help. You're confident you qualify, but not sure if it'll be enough. So if you can just answer that poll question for us, that'd be great. Also, you'll see on there, there's a quick little invitation there to, if you're in the area, you want to look at our upcoming open houses, you can actually view those on there and be able to RSVP with us. So if you want to come check out Washington Christian Academy. But regardless, if you're not able to come to an open house or doesn't fit, you can also contact us directly. You have David's email address here and also the school phone number. So please be sure to reach out to us through any of these means. We're here to answer your questions, and I think you'll find that the team here is extremely helpful in helping families just like you come find the answers they need. So let me give you the results of our poll here. 17% of you are researching options. 67% of you are know you qualify for assistance, but you need help. And 17% of you are confident you qualify for aid, but not sure if it will be enough. So just to give you a feel for some of the responses there and where you might fall in with others here on the presentation. So Dave, we do have a couple questions here. The first one is financial aid only for poor and needy people?
Well, no. I hope if there's anything that's come through in this presentation, I would say that's the most important thing. Don't think of tuition assistance, as I said, like food stamps. It serves a range of families and needs. It typically takes in expenses, not just what a family's salary is. It takes into account multiple children, and I encourage every family that's applying to think about it and to ask.
Great, thank you. Yeah, here's another question for you. Can you give an example of a middle-class family like mine who has a middle-class salary? Roughly, we have 3 kids, and we want to enroll our children in the school. What percent can we expect to get in tuition assistance from you?
What is typical, but for one student is up to 50%. We don't have a specific multiple student discount, but that automatically works its way into our tuition assistance process, because you have with 2 children, or 3 in your example, you have 3 tuitions to pay. So that significantly changes that expected family contribution. So with multiple children, it goes up beyond 50% to 60%. Again, is typical for families with multiple children.
Right, and I assume it's just a matter of all the variables that come into play through the application, the financial aid application, that helps you better narrow that down for that particular family. Right? It's
right. It's a combination of that. It's also kind of where the school is at that particular point. Looking at our budget, again, we wish we could accept and give 80% tuition awards to every family that knocked on our door. We would not be able to pay our teachers if we did that. So that's a part of what we're looking at when we figure that out too.
So that brings up another question. So in terms of timing, when should people be putting in their financial aid applications? Is it better to wait till the summer, or should they be doing it now? What can you give a kind of a sense for, just as in general with all Christian schools,
right,
but maybe in particular here too?
Right. So in general, I would always say for any school, the sooner the better. And in schools, it has to do with, there are some schools that have deadlines associated with amounts. So they'll say, we're going to give out, tuition, this much tuition assistance, and have a specific deadline associated with that. So obviously you need to get it done by whatever that deadline is. There are other schools like our school that it's more a rolling process. We don't have a specific deadline either for admission or for tuition assistance, but the more tuition assistance is available in our budget sooner rather than later. And then the other thing you run into apart from tuition assistance are just classes filling up. So where we might have a tuition assistance budget, the grade might be full. And so for WCA, we're encouraging, as we do, people, don't wait any longer than you need to, and pursue, learning about the school as soon as you can. So we don't want to hurry anybody in any decision, that they're making, and set artificial deadlines to create artificial pressure. But as soon as I would say it's a place for you, then don't wait to pursue it.
Great. We have another question here that might be is really perceptive here. Are most families, this is from Janine, are most families who are on tuition assistance on it for multiple years? Is there a worry that the assistance will come and go year to year?
Boy, that is a great question. There are schools that will have multiple year awards, and that's the way that we handle this. We understand that as a family is sitting around their kitchen table, they've got their budget out, they're thinking about that. It's not just this year. What family wants to put their child into school for 1 year and then figure it all out again that next year and the year after that? So we give out multiple year awards. Ours are 3 or 4 if you start at 9th grade in high school to get you through, the education. That's something else our tuition assistance committee is very sensitive about, even at those transitions between those year awards, making sure that when a family comes in, it's sustainable. It's sustainable both for the family, it's sustainable for the school. It doesn't benefit either the school or the family, for them to have to figure that out and have different answers to that every year.
Great, thank you. Shannon has a question. Is there a particular grade you would recommend for transferring into WCA from homeschooling?
Great question. I would say that, the first thing it has to do with your student and the reason that you're going to be bringing them from homeschool into, a Christian school environment. Is there something going on in their life or circumstance that is bringing that? So the first thing you think about is your child, your student, and what they're thinking about. From the school's perspective, there are transition grades that are typical. So that would be into middle school starting 6th grade, and then into high school starting 9th grade. But at the same time, I wouldn't wait. So for example, if your student's in 4th grade and you're really thinking about, Christian school and private education starting in middle school, don't necessarily wait through that 5th grade. At times, schools' classes can fill up, and in those transition points, things like that might happen. So in general, the answer is 6th and 9th grade is those transition years, but you need to add on top of that, or put first really what's going on in your child's life.
Great. Just in general, as you've worked with homeschoolers through the past years, where do you see what years most homeschoolers are transferring in here?
It would be either in the beginning of the middle school or typically the beginning of high school. Some of the challenges associated with homeschooling and labs and science classes and things like that are more challenging for parents to do in homeschooling.
Great. Betty has a question for us. She asks, I already have my daughter at a private school and receive aid. Can I apply and see whether I can afford to pay prior to any commitment? How about waiving application fee to allow families to apply?
So you can certainly apply and find out what kind of tuition assistance you would receive at another school, even if you're enrolled in one right now. So we have families doing that all the time, and we recognize that every year there's a decision family's going to make, and so we know other schools do too. Are you going to re-enroll? Have you been satisfied with the education and what's going on there? So that's something that private schools expect. That's a question families are going to be asking themselves, and processes are there to certainly allow families to do that. We have discussed your second question about, do I have to pay the application fee to find out what my financial award's going to be? There are times when we will waive that. It depends upon the individual circumstance. We don't do it universally because from the school's perspective, there's an amount of work associated with us doing that. And we really want, as we invest in families and thinking and even walking with them through the application process and tuition assistance process, we're investing in them. We want them to have some level of investment in us. And that isn't always financial. We can tell that at times in our conversations with the families, but certainly at least paying an application fee is a way we see a part of that investment.
So the commitment,
right?
There's skin in the game,
right?
Both ways,
right? And exactly.
Great. And do you have to, with the third party, do you have to pay them to get them to analyze your finances? Isn't there a
yes? Yeah, there is a small fee associated with the third party service.
Okay, great. So regardless, there's
right.
There's fees involved no matter what. So.
Yes.
Great. Well, good. I think we've gotten most of the questions answered here, and I think we can wrap up here. So again, if anyone has any further questions or you want to talk about your particular situation, please reach out to David or Cherie. You also have her contact information, and they'll be glad to talk about your particular situation. But we've had a great time here talking to you, and hopefully you found this information helpful. So thanks again, and hopefully you'll be on we're going to have some more webinars in the near future, and you can come to visit those, or you can just come visit the school. So hope to see you soon. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you so much for spending time and the investment you've already made in listening to us today. God bless you.